Through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey of growth. Day by day, through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey.
Good morning.
Of growth, day by
Good
day.
morning.
Nice
Oh,
to
I
see
thought
you
it
on this
came up live
Friday.
stream then. I was like,
Oh, you
hello,
are
everyone.
live.
Hello, disappeared.
Okay, so we are jumping on bandwagons today.
Oh, yeah. But this will be a late bandwagon, won't it?
It
Because
will
it'll
be
be
very
quite
late.
delayed.
Yeah, and I'm not sure when this will come out, but we are at the beginning of April now.
Yeah.
So we're kind of we're a bit late to the game already.
So true. It's
So
already
it's
been
going to be
discussed
really
on
late.
major
But
the major podcast, but on the on the more secondary podcast like ourselves.
yeah, we've listened to everyone else. Now we'll just rehash it.
No. This is a real version of what happened.
Yeah. I can't remember when this will come out, but it will be late. But hopefully, then we won't cause any spoilers or anything like that because people will have
Well, I
either
don't think
watched it or they
anyone's
won't.
really cared. I don't think anyone cares on the podcasts I've listened to. Nobody's really cared about spoilering.
No, well, I
alerting.
suppose you listen to it after you've watched it, don't you?
Yeah.
So we're talking about Adolescence, which probably by the time this comes out, there'll be something else that's all over the news. I must admit, I haven't actually really read anything. All before I watched it, it just kept popping up on my socials and things. I'd see in groups, like if I was in a parenting group, I'd see somebody saying how highly they recommend it, and then I did a bit of digging and saw that it was all over Parliament, and I thought, and I, as I like to say, don't watch TV. I don't really watch TV, not for myself. I do watch it with the family once or twice a week, but it's
We don't have a
family
lot to do with
orientated.
legacy media, I think is what you're trying to say.
Oh my God, I've never even heard what that is. What is legacy media? Old fashioned.
Old-fashioned news where you're led.
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't usually sit down and watch something like this.
Oh, you don't? Yeah, you don't even watch.
No.
Like I will find things to what I like to do. I like to unwind by putting something, like the Silent Twins on or something like that, to really unwind.
Something laid back, chilled out, easy watching. Yeah, no, but we made the effort. The kids had a sleepover at the weekend.
I was going to say,
and
I
so
wasn't
Matt
sure
and
I wasn't sure if it was one
it.
for the children.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. They go to bed at 9, 8:30, 9, and so do I. And so it's not like I'm going to come downstairs and watch TV. If they weren't around, obviously I would be watching stuff. But
actually, to be fair, I think I did stay up late on a Saturday night and watch this. I stayed up till about 11 because I couldn't stop watching the whole thing.
Yeah,
I had to watch it all in one hit. So
well, that's what we did when they went away. 6 o'clock we started.
Yeah.
And by 10:30. So we kind of then had a bit of a discussion, didn't we? And we had I don't know if we had different views on the programme. I think we had different views on how the programme should be used.
Definitely.
And then I don't even know if they were that different, our views, but we had a little bit of a discussion, didn't we, and thought that we'd bring it into this.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so having watched the full, obviously this is about kids in a state school as well, which I think makes a difference. And particularly to how you school your children. What are your views then on the aspect of the child in the school and how everything's dealt with there?
Okay, so I've got about 10 different thoughts.
Where do you want to start?
on stuff. So I don't know if I've really thought about how children are treated in school. But I can go through my unless you want to share your opinion. So my first thought when I watched it was, are parents really letting their 14-year-olds out at that time of night? But not just
what time?
It
was 10 o'clock, wasn't it? It was out till 10. Was it?
Yeah.
Or was it 10 o'clock it happened?
So it happened at 10 o'clock. It's not just the boys, it's the girl as well. But
she was slightly older, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was slightly older. But on reflection,
still that age, I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Well, I've had this conversation with a couple of friends, and I think on a school night, for example, I would not have been. That just wouldn't have happened. But on a weekend, I don't think. I mean, he was 13, wasn't he?
He was 13. I think she was 15.
So I don't think I was much older than that when I was going to an under 18s disco on a Friday or Saturday night, and my parents would drop me at the door and they would pick me up from the door, but there was
Mm,
no one holding me in, so I could easily have gone walking the streets during that time.
mm.
And I had this conversation with an old school friend, because I said exactly the same. I can't now, looking at Ezra now, there's no way. I mean, I'd barely let her go to the shop across the road, let alone
Mm.
walk in the streets at 9, 10 p.m. at night, and she is 13.
Yeah, I think darkness makes a lot of difference, doesn't it? Like during the day, I don't think I'd have had a
Mm.
problem with Sian going out, and I do remember her going out. Um,
Well,
but
she would have been
also
going to
these days,
school, wouldn't she, on her own?
and yeah, and also these days, you have trackers, don't you? I mean, Sian tracks me all
Mm.
the time.
Yeah.
Never
Well,
mind, I forget I've got it, but you do you can know. So perhaps parents are more lenient. Obviously, Sian's a lot older now, so I don't tend not to think about it. But perhaps you're more lenient now because you know where they are. You can see where they are, so it gives you a false sense of security, perhaps.
and I'm not sure. I just think that I've got a bit of a warped sense of reality, because I think what my friend said when I said it to her was she used
Mm,
to be dropped off in our local high street, probably not at 10 p.m. at night, but I don't know how much she would have had to push it. She probably, potentially that could have happened. And I can
I
remember
walk the
going,
streets. I walk the streets. We used to go to the park
yeah,
at the
yeah,
top, and at that age, at 13, definitely, I was at the park
yeah.
drinking cider. Probably 13.
I can remember going to a party, and I was probably 14 or 15, and it was a house party. the
Mm,
the the girls' parents were away. What idiot does that kind of thing? I had two friends who did that, had parents who went away, and the house has got completely trashed both times. Um, but this girl did that, and I can remember afterwards we all went to the local park, and it was like, do you know what? I don't even know where I went at the end of the night, or how I got home, or I mean, my
mm,
parents must have picked me up, I'm sure, but whether they picked me up from the park or what or where, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't too dissimilar to what I am now at that age. So I would drink alcohol, but I wasn't doing drugs and things like that. But a lot of the people were, and some people I
mm.
know were. Oh my God, I need to sneeze again. Why do I always need to sneeze?
Bless
Sorry.
you.
Um, they were off their heads on all kinds of stuff, and I think we
Oh,
were
see, at that
14,
age,
15.
yeah, I don't really
Maybe we were
remember there being a
15.
lot of that around.
I have to work. I have to. I have to work out my ages where I was at with boyfriends, what boyfriend I
Oh,
had at
okay.
the time.
Yeah, I don't really that sort of age. I don't really. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
but I
pretty bad.
don't. Yeah, but then right. So
So
going on
moving
to
on.
this though, the knife crime side of things. That wasn't. Was there knives? I don't remember there
No.
being
Well, yes,
knives.
but no, not like there are
Weapon,
now.
like they used to be fight. The boys used to fight. I remember boys fighting. They'd be like, "Oh, Woodside v Tar Pots." Like there was
Mm,
different areas that you'd go to. And talking to Pete, funnily enough, about turf wars around here, it'd be like Canvey versus Benfleet. Like they hated each other, and like they try and. Pete said you had to lock your car doors when you went on to. I mean, this is obviously when you're
yeah,
driving, so sort of 17-year-olds, and because Benfleet would try and beat up Canvey kids and things like that. He said, but it wasn't knife crime. It wasn't
no,
people stabbing each other.
I
It
don't
was,
think so.
they, you know,
That obviously
it,
did happen,
yeah,
but not like not
not in
kind
my
of.
sphere.
No, definitely not. So that was my first reflection. Like,
Hmm,
but I think it's more normal than I realize. Um, and then the next thing that was really striking for me is how we, as people in general, I think even us at our age, but obviously it's more of a problem for a child, misinterpret what's normal. So
hmm,
I felt very much that the little boy misinterpreted what's normal. So, and this came up when he was talking to the psychologist, and she was questioning him on whether it's normal for a 13-year-old to be sexually intimate
hmm,
with girls, and he
yeah.
he was just like, yeah, of course. And I think that shouldn't be normal, should it?
But because he obviously thinks it was normal because perhaps other people were saying it was,
Yeah,
whether or not, but 13-year-olds aren't like
yeah,
they're trying to impress each other, aren't they? Rather
yes,
than anything else.
yeah. And
So,
so he's probably potentially a child, potentially
mm,
is working themselves up in their own mind about, all of that self-hatred he had about not being good
mm.
enough, about being ugly, and all of those things coming from a complete
And micro
misrepresentation
memories
of the
from his,
truth.
and also his micro memories from his dad's behaviour at football matches and things like that. And I think you brought that up as well.
That's another point.
His dad
Yeah.
looking away because because he wasn't looking at him because he wasn't that good at football. Is that right?
Yeah, and so that was something that I again, the misinterpretation. So I think there's two separate parts of that. There's the
Mm.
misinterpreting what everyone else is doing and therefore thinking that
Yeah.
you are a failure because everyone else is doing differently or better or succeeding. I mean, not that better is the right word in this, but that's how he perceived it, that they're doing
Mm.
better because they're getting sexual intimacy with females and he wasn't, because no one had maybe ever told him that isn't normal at that age and that isn't what everyone's
Mm.
doing.
Should you be
But
having
yeah,
conversations like that with your children at that age, though? At 13 years old, I probably had spoken to Sean about things at that age.
when I did some research around um, that subject, I learned that all children should know what sex is by the age of 5 from a sexual abuse perspective.
Hmm.
And there are lots of books out there that talk about that and relationships. And yeah, some of the work I'm doing in the girls groups is touching on that. It's not about that, but I read them books and it talks about vaguely about that kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
there'll be the odd sentence. And I think it is important for kids to have a safe space where that's discussed, especially at 13, definitely, if not younger.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
But yeah, going on to the football scene. Um, so we got the story from both perspectives, didn't we? We got the child who said that his dad couldn't look at him because he was so ashamed of him. And then we got the story from the dad, which wasn't quite as direct, but my perspective that I got from the dad was that the dad was taking him to football to toughen him up, which was the dad's words. I tried to toughen him up, which is another point, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
mm,
And I got the sense the dad was saying, I knew he didn't like it. I knew he didn't want to be there, and I was making him be there. And he was not very good at it. And the other parents laughed at him, and I just couldn't look because, and he didn't say because, but I sensed it was because the dad was so ashamed of himself for forcing the
mm,
child to do it, not because he was ashamed of the child.
yeah.
That's the perspective I got. And I think that might be a really subtle nuance that I'm not sure is really that clear. That was the message I took from it. I'm not sure everyone would take that message from it, but if it is the way I perceived it, I think it's a real highlights that it's a Gabor Mate quote, isn't it? I think like trauma isn't what happens to us, it's what happens inside of us when
Yeah,
something
how
happens
you
to us.
react, how you personally react to the situation and how you take it on rather than what your
Yeah.
meaning of it is rather than what it actually is.
Yeah. And so you get a lot of parents who might behave in a certain way and it's justified,
Mm,
um, in a sense, but there's no consideration for what's going on inside of the child, or the parent might say something like, well, I did it with good intention, or I did it because I cared,
yeah,
or and actually it could potentially cause huge problems inside of the child.
particularly if they can't articulate what they're feeling as well.
Oh yeah, they just miss it, or if
Mm,
they just misinterpret. And I think, but this, from my perspective, isn't just about a parent doing something like that. It's even, we talked very briefly the other day about um, childhood childhood illnesses or something,
mm,
and I mentioned that I'd worked with someone once before who had some childhood illness. They had to have an operation. I can't remember. It was quite a big deal. They had to be in
yeah,
hospital for a period of time, but back then parents weren't allowed to stay with the children. And so
mm,
this child was like 3 or 4 years old, and everything was with positive intent. Like they were in hospital because they needed to be in hospital. They were having this treatment because they needed the treatment. The parents were there as much as they could possibly be there. And I think even sometimes when they
Yeah.
couldn't, they were looking through a window, but it still completely traumatized the.
But that kind of thing does still happen now. When Sean was in hospital, I had to fight to stay in the hospital. Like, I refused to leave, and then they had to let me stay.
Mm,
And she was a bit older then. She was like 14, 15. But it's I suppose, yeah, it's difficult to, if there's something like that that happens and you can't explain it, and the parent does want to be there but they can't, then they're too young,
yeah,
and they'll misinterpret that.
yeah. So I do think it's important for people to check in that there hasn't been misinterpretations.
Mm,
And that's what I have noted as well, that the parents in the show were clearly loving and trying their best, but they never really checked in to make.
mm,
They did what they thought was best, but didn't. It appeared they didn't really ever check in with the children to check that the children felt that it was
yeah.
that
But we
whether they
don't
needed
know, do
anything
we?
different.
Because it's not a documentary,
No,
it's a dramatized
yeah,
series. And this is what I think, that, you know, the uproar with that, with it going into Parliament and things like that. And I'm like, there's plenty of other really, really good factual documentaries out there that, and this is a dramatized series with, yeah, I know it's the intent behind it, but I'm just a bit, I'm on the fence when it comes to this being shown in schools for sure.
yeah. Well, let's discuss that in a minute. Oh, shall I finish my point, or do you want to talk about that?
No, no, go on, you go on.
Um, I thought the dad's anger stood out. Again, it wasn't extreme, and I think
Mm.
many people would have resonated with that expression of anger. I don't think it was too untoward. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I thought he was a very, it came across, but again, you don't know the anything that's gone on really beforehand, do you? But within the setting of what you
Mm,
saw, he seemed like a very normal working class father, as
yeah,
in, you know, he wasn't. When the boy was talking about his, you know, there's a couple of arguments, and when he was making a shed or something, wasn't there? I haven't got as detailed notes as you have, but there was
yeah.
a,
He'd pulled a
and
shed down.
he lost his temper doing that, but there was no physical violence. There was no nothing like abusive in a way that you would expect that then would lead to a child killing another child.
No.
Like when you look at people that are murderers in real life, when you go back through their childhood, that you can literally pick apart on a lot of them, there's never no reason that doesn't come from beforehand and something they've learned, or there is something inherently wrong with the child to begin with. As in, you can look at their brains and the scans of their brains and tell that they're a psychopath, or, you know, that kind of thing, and that they were inherently, this path was going to happen anyway because of what had happened to them. But when it comes to, I think, the father's behaviour there, you would think, well, you know, he was a hard-working father. He was a provider. The parents seemed to have a good relationship. They were together. His sister was seemed well balanced, and they were a tight-knit family. Even after everything that happened, they stuck together.
Mm, yeah, and I totally agree with you that this is a made up story. So we can't look any deeper than what we saw
No,
because it didn't
there
exist.
isn't anything. Yeah.
And but I think that the points that I've seen, like these things that I'm saying, I think that they're really they're almost like little clips in my mind of reality, what I see with clients, for
Mm.
example. So that anger, to me, it didn't stand out. I can't say that he got any more angry than either Matt or I have got in the home in the past.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, but I also know other people who have, well, so I'm talking about the anger that we saw. Neither of us have ripped a shed down, but um, I do know, a friend who has displayed that kind of anger in the home, and they are a very, very middle class, considerate family who put their children before anyone and
Mm.
everything, and everything is about the family. And I know that anger has an effect on their children. I can see that from a therapist's perspective. I'm
Yeah.
not sure they can. And I think this was a good, I think from my perspective, Jamie couldn't hold in his anger, like the anger he displayed when he was talking to the psychologist,
Mm.
like that going from 0 to 100
Yeah.
with not much provocation. And
With a stranger as well. I don't think, yeah, was it? No, it wasn't the first time she'd seen him, was it? But it's still not a necessarily known person. He was still maintaining his innocence at that point as well, wasn't he?
yeah, so put a knife in that person's hand, put someone in front of them who riles them up, as
Yeah.
were the case potentially with him in the because didn't the CCTV show her pushing him over?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so a child whose anger goes from nothing to 100 with
Mm.
little provocation, and they've got a knife in their hand.
And with a very with an adolescent, as the
Brain,
title
yeah,
says, brain,
yeah,
not really thinking about the consequences at the time.
exactly. So I think the father's anger, I wonder if we notice ourselves in life expressing that kind of anger in the home,
Mm.
maybe this is a reminder, because of course not everyone's child's going to go and stab someone, but it is a reminder that those little snippets of anger like that,
Mm.
I don't want to say extreme anger, but just very quickly turning,
Mm.
would affect a child.
Yeah.
Most of us probably do it, but
Never
is
mind.
is there
Never mind
something
some of the
you
worst
can
things that
do?
we know goes on in the homes.
Yeah. Is there something you can do to go and read some books, go to a therapist, just a
Chop
little,
a tree down.
yeah, yeah, just something, just a little bit of introspection, so you start to understand yourself and your triggers and can
Mm.
manage yourself a little bit better. Also, though, the dad tried to toughen him up, didn't he? And that appears to be a
Mm.
thing, like
That's a very boomery
society.
type thing to say, though, isn't it?
I
We're going
don't
to toughen
know.
him up.
Oh no, I
Do
think
you?
that still happens. Yeah, I do.
Don't they? Don't the kids? Don't they these days send them to, like, go and do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, go and, like, that
Well,
kind of
it's the
thing,
same
rather
thing
than,
though, isn't it? If
yeah,
they're not
yeah,
sporty and they
send them
don't
there.
enjoy it.
But then that teaches them, yeah, I suppose, yeah, if they don't enjoy it, I
I
mean,
think he did.
I'd love that.
I think in the program he did say I sent him to the martial arts,
Oh,
and he
really?
was.
Oh, I
I'm
didn't see.
sure
I didn't miss that
he
part.
said he sent him somewhere and he was no good at that, so he sent him to football. But
Yeah,
but to toughen him up rather than just allowing him to be himself.
yeah. See, not having boys, you don't know how you'd react to not being a man. How would you want to perceive? Do you want, and also parents for wanting their kids to be an extension of them as well, not being able to
Mm,
separate themselves from their children. Like, oh, he's embarrassing me. Oh,
exactly.
well, no, it's just that you've just not found what he's good at,
Or
his
you just
area
can't
of
deal with
expertise.
him
You can't
being
deal with
him.
your own emotions.
But
There's
it's
that.
I think that still happens. I think we do still, even with having girls, I do it myself, and it certainly happens. Like people certainly question around me, like if they're not quite meeting the same standard as the people around, as kind of the average robot around them.
Mm.
Or do they need to do this or do they need to do that? Especially being out of school, their academic attainments aren't necessarily
Mm.
on point with their peers, and it's like, well, what can we do to get them on point? And so it's no different, I wouldn't have thought, to having a boy who was a little more sensitive or a little less masculine, and wanting them to be the same as the people that you see around them. But you only see what you're looking for, don't you? You don't see the people
Yeah.
who are not doing that. um
Mm.
and what about time together? I noticed that they didn't show any family time before it happened, obviously, because there was nothing shown before. But
Mm.
I got the sense there wasn't so much. It was just the child sat in his room all the time. And then afterwards, when they showed that family time in the car going on the dad's birthday,
Mm.
I got the sense that family time was because she was saying, I've been for ages, I haven't done this gone to the cinema or whatever for ages.
Weren't they also told they were using therapeutic language as well? So they must have been getting help themselves, and they were saying
Oh yeah.
things like, oh, each day at a time, or like, today's we're taking today's one day,
Mm.
and that's what they've told us, one day,
Yeah.
we'll just get through today.
Yeah.
And it does make you wonder what their life was like beforehand when it came to being a family together.
But I reckon that can be so easy once, if your children, you do see these children who just take themselves off to their room and get on with it. And like I said, Matt and I don't get time to watch TV because we've always got the kids there, or like adult TV,
Wish
because
they
we've
bloody
always
go
got
up
the
to their
kids
rooms.
there.
Oh.
But I
You've got the
don't.
opposite
But if
problem.
they did, no, but it's not, is it? Like the people who, you can see why people are like,
Yeah.
even I went out for a coffee with a friend, and I bumped into some friends of ours in the coffee shop, and they were a couple, and they homered their kids, and I was like, "Where are your kids?" And they said, "Oh, they're home on their own," which was fine, age-wise, it was appropriate, it was fine. But I thought, oh, they've come out for a coffee, just the two of them, and left the kids at home for a few hours. Well, we wouldn't really think to do that, but actually you can see how easy it could become if the kids started just taking themselves off to the room and hiding away from there, to then start doing things for
But
themselves.
do you think? But you see, I just think that if you have the connection, and I've said this before, with your child won't go out and just bloody stab somebody. They'll come to you if there's bullying going on. They'll come, like, the connection that you've got with your children would mean that it wouldn't escalate to that point without them even like those parents and adolescents had no clue about their child's behaviour or aggression at all. Like,
Exactly. And why didn't they? So to me, it's because the parents
yeah,
didn't
they
ever
did.
check in.
Yeah.
They didn't have
Mm,
potentially didn't have quality
yeah.
time as a family, and they kind of,
They have
I don't
surface
know if
level
let
connection
yeah
with their kids.
I don't know if let is the right word, like let their kids just go to their room for the whole evening or whole day and not engage with them, because I don't know if that's a permitted thing, but
No, I think
they
that
didn't
they.
arrange other things.
I think it's like it's the just enough parenting, isn't it? Where you basically just meet their needs, as in like shelter, food, and then
Yeah,
you just let them go. You don't actually sit down but it can't just start when they're a teenager. Oh, how was your day?
no,
This has got to be from the beginning that the child knows that you're a safe person to come to. And a lot of children don't. They don't have that. They internalize everything, and I think that's a highlight of it, is the child's just everything in their head. They don't talk to their mates about it because they sound stupid. Like that's how they interpret. They can't talk to their, especially boys, can't talk to their friends. But then going back to our childhood, I didn't speak about my kind of feelings to my friends. And now, as I'm older and I've got school friends from when I was younger, and we talk about it now, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me that? I'm like, well, we just thought it was normal.
I don't think you know as a child what's
No,
not normal, do you?
no,
You assume that whatever's going on inside your house is what's going on
yeah,
inside every house, and if it's not going
mm,
on inside every house, it's abnormal. They're
yeah,
abnormal. You're
mm,
normal. They're abnormal. Um, uh, the thing is, you say about the connection with the child, I completely agree. Though I had this kind of, with Ezra and Shiloh getting to an age where they could. I don't know. I feel like there's a point in a child where I mean, there is obviously from a psychological perspective, which you probably know more about than me, but where they break away and realize they're an independent person from you. I
mm,
can't remember what age that is. Is it like 4 or 5 or something? Um, and then they kind of, everything's just happening. Everything that happens just happens. But then there comes a point where they must experience sadness about things, or discomfort about stuff and
mm,
everything. And I I think, um, for a while that sadness and stuff might be a bit more obvious, but then they get to an age where they can make a choice about whether to tell you or not tell you.
mm,
And I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of things. Oh, I wonder if there's things that Ezra and Shiloh don't tell me. I think
mm. I know. I think there is with Sean as well because we've spoken about this, and I think there's the teenage years, isn't there, where they break away to find their own identity, and then and obviously rebel against you, but not against you, just as in like they're just finding their own self away from you as an adult as
Mm.
such or a young adult, but they come back like as in you've got to let them have their space. And I don't, there's things like when Sian was younger, her great grandmother died and she absolutely adored her, obviously. She was very close to her and she wrote a letter on my laptop, but she didn't want me to read it and she wanted it put into a an envelope, and it was more about sort of she wasn't how old was she? Probably she was maybe 13, probably that sort of age. But she didn't want me to read it. And I've never read it. And she forgot about it. I said to the other day, I said, I've got that old laptop upstairs. I said, the letter that you wrote to Nanny Joe. And I think, at that point, she didn't want to tell me what was, and I wanted to know, don't get me wrong. I really wanted to know what was going on, but I still haven't read the letter. It was on my laptop and I'm like, no, I'm not reading. That's her personal. And she dealt with her feelings in a letter then and put them into, she didn't want to talk to me about it. She did, as much as, and we spoke about everything, and we spoke about other, like her feelings of grief and things like that. But this letter was really important to her to be personal. So I think there are maybe some things that you should allow to be, and not intrude on what's in their mind, even if you can, kind of thing. And they need to be able to process things themselves
Do you think
without you interfering.
rather than creating connection with your child, it's about creating a safe space so that
Yeah,
they,
but isn't that intertwined as well?
I don't know. I guess it must be intertwined. Like if you were completely disconnected, then you wouldn't be a safe space.
Mm.
But I think you could be a safe space without necessarily, well, maybe not. I don't know.
There's certain things that Sean and I have discussed, and we're like, no, that's too much information. We're not going to,
Yeah.
talking about really personal things at her age now, and we're like, yeah, we don't need to talk about those.
No, so you can be
But she knows she
probably,
could come to me.
but you could probably be connected and unsafe then. So think about
Yeah, yeah,
kids. I've worked with, and I'm sure you have, lots of women who had kind of codependent relationships with their mothers,
mm,
and so
yes,
they would phone their mothers every single day, speak for hours on the phone. They became like the emotional carer for their mother, meeting all of the mother's needs,
yes,
but that mother wasn't a safe space for them. They couldn't have
yeah.
taken their
That was
problems
my
to their,
experience.
so there was kind of like a deep connection
Mm.
because they're speaking
But it
so
was
much, and
one-sided.
it's very, yeah,
Mm.
very like intimate conversations,
Well,
but
it's
very,
adult parentification, isn't
yeah,
it? You
exactly
probably
that.
didn't really notice it when you were younger, and then as you're older, then all of a sudden you're the person that they come. Hold on a minute.
So how do you create a safe space then for a
But
teenage child?
I suppose it's more. I didn't have to worry. Sean never went out as much as that, but I suppose there was a couple of incidents where
I
there
mean,
was trouble
safe
and things
for
that
them
happened.
to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more the openness, isn't it? And it has to start from an early age, doesn't it? It's not being intrusive, but I suppose reinforcing the fact that you are there should they need to. I suppose for me, I just found it naturally came to me because of the way that I was treated. I wouldn't say I necessarily did the opposite, but it was just there
Do you think you were
because,
always a safe space for Sean?
yeah, without a doubt. But then I was a single parent, wasn't I?
Hmm.
So she didn't necessarily, but she has a
But
similar
even when you were
relationship with her dad.
drinking, you reckon?
I don't know because she has said to me that if I had been when I was older, if she was when she was older, sorry, if I'd have carried on drinking, then she probably wouldn't have had the relationship she's got with me now. So
Hmm.
perhaps not. And there was a time where I think we lost a bit of connection when there was things going on with me, but I quickly saw what was going on and recalibrated. But this is why I just don't think everyone can get everything 100% right.
Mm.
And that's the thing. It's not. But it's again going back to self-awareness, understanding when you're making mistakes and then rectifying them.
I think that's really
and
important.
and
Exactly like you say, taking ownership.
yeah, and the fixing of problems and showing um, how to recalibrate and how to come back together again.
Yeah. So we have acknowledged that it's a fictional drama. It's not
Yeah.
real. I do believe there's part of me that feels a bit of an imposter here because I don't watch anything on TV, and I know that probably most things on TV are well researched and based on
Yeah, and also I
a lot of
don't. From what I've listened to these podcasts, I mean, who was the guy? Hold on, let me go back to my notes. So William Costello did a good podcast with Chris Williamson on this, and he was sort of highlighting the perspective that it's a dramatized series and not a documentary,
yeah,
which I've said,
yeah,
and it's fiction designed to provoke emotion and conversation, but it doesn't mean it should be used as a tool
no,
in schools. It was, it was great cinematography. I love that kind of thing that keeps me interested. And it was filmed in each episode was filmed in one take. The amount of engineering that went into that. But let's say there was a lot of perspective on that, and that would have taken up a lot of, I don't know, would the police have gone in that heavy on a child that was for a knife crime? Would have armed police? Would they have, I don't know, would
I
they have
don't know.
stormed in to get a 15-year-old, 13-year-old child?
There was a lot of police.
Would armed police have gone in and stormed a house like that? I don't know. I presume they would do, because you wouldn't really, or is that a dramatisation?
Yeah, I don't know, and I agree with you. I think that it's been made available in schools, but it's not been put on the national curriculum, so it doesn't
Probably
mean
shouldn't be
that
either.
it's going to
But
be.
some of the stuff on there.
I
Yeah.
guess that every head teacher makes that decision on whether they want it shown. I did read something that there was a particular school where the children were asking for it to be shown, um, because they thought it
But
was important. So that's
do
fair
you know
enough.
another point that Pete made to me the other day when I was saying about this? He hasn't seen it, but I've given him a good old rundown because he loves
Yeah.
to listen to me wittering on. And he said, "Why would you want to show?" He said he remembers going into his mum asked him to get some peroxide when he was a child. He was a young child, and could go to the chemist and get me some peroxide. I mean, at that time, you could take a note down to the shop and ask, get me some
Secretly.
fags.
Yeah.
My mum's got a note for some. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, his mum asked him to go to the chemist and get him some peroxide. And he was a young, impressionable boy, say 12, 13 years old. Anyway, when he went into the chemist was like, "Oh, what do you want? What do you want this for?" He's like, "Oh, for my mum's hair dye." It's like, "Well, as long as it's not, as long as you're not trying to make explosives out of it or something like." And he's like, and then the woman was like, "Oh, well
What a good
done,
idea.
well done. Why would you tell a child that?" And he was like, "Oh, you can make explosives out of." Well, I don't know. I don't know because I'm not. But
Yeah.
like, and he was just like, "Oh," like he said, "I wouldn't have known that if they hadn't have told me." He said, "So why would you? Why would you go and put that into schools when a lot of kids are actually very innocent and would not even think of picking up a knife and killing another bloody kid?
Yeah.
Like, why do
It could
that?"
be that.
Yeah, okay. But surely that's for the parents to decide. And I think schools need to stay in their lane.
Well, I
And
don't think it's school though, is it? It's the government. I don't
well,
think
yeah.
schools have any choice about what they do in school, or they have so little choice about what they do in school. I think
Mm.
um, it's all in my opinion, all the government. But there were some questions I happened across that could be that they could generate if. Well, I said, didn't I? I said that if you're going to do this, or I would like the filmmakers, if it's them who's been pushing for this to be um, a thing. I don't know if it is, but if it is, then I would like them to make a separate program that shows scenes from the adolescence with a bit of theory behind it, a bit of an
Yeah.
education. I think
And
that could be
there's
good.
questions also around that with the research they did. So that William Costello was saying about how when the young actor who played Jamie, he basically helped them rewrite some of their scripts because he
Mm,
said that doesn't happen. That's not true. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's a drama.
So um some education because it was quite open as well. Like you don't really know what they were insinuating with certain
Well, at one
things.
point, I did wonder if he did kill her. I was like, well, it's very quick, did
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
because the other kid that was involved as well, who got the knife for him, um, you know,
yeah. So it would be good. But what I found interesting, um, a separate thing, well, it's related but separate, is social media was obviously the problem in
yeah.
this. Like, social media.
And Andrew Tate was mentioned. They actually named him, and I
Yeah,
wonder how they
yeah.
got away with that.
But also
Like he's
that's
to
what
blame for all kids. Like,
yeah, that's what I thought was relevant as well. Even though it's highlighted in the program and it's important, we remember that Katie was the victim.
Mm,
Had she not been stabbed, had he gone to somebody and told somebody that he was being bullied, she would have been the perpetrator.
yes,
So I'm not suggesting that she should have been stabbed for bullying in any way at all. It's like saying, it's like that classic, a woman shouldn't have been in the car park alone and then she wouldn't have got raped. But
yeah,
actually, I think it's important that people do see the effect of bullying on
yeah.
somebody as well.
And I think that's a really good point, because it's like at any point in time, if you could have gone, and this is why the connection part. And I think if you go back in, and I've used this example not very well before, but Jeffrey Dahmer, who is a prolific serial killer of women, and he basically, you take Jeffrey Dahmer at a 4-year-old who was being horrifically abused by whoever. I can't remember the full details, so
Mm.
I should have researched the example. You would then feel sorry for the 4-year-old. You'd be like, he needs help. He needs to be taken away from his family, or he needs to be, that's at
Yeah.
that point in time. Yet 18-year-old, 20-year-old, whoever he was when he first did his first killing, needs to, needs to basically be castrated or put to sleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at any point in time, if you'd have taken back, where does it start? Where does the victim?
Where do they become? Where does the victim
Yeah,
become? Yeah, or the other
because
way
it's not
around. Where does
all.
the victim is a victim?
Yeah,
Is that what we're trying to
so
say? No, the victim. Oh, I don't know what we're trying to say,
when
but
does the
I get what you
victim
mean.
become the perpetrator, because they were a
Yeah.
victim to start off with, and that's what shaped
Oh,
them.
this was
Shaped the murderer.
but this was the other way around, wasn't it?
Mm.
She was a perpetrator and became a victim.
Yeah,
So the other, but what I was looking at was social media laws across countries. As usual, the United Kingdom have the most lax social media rules
do
across the
they though? Because
whole
aren't they
world.
arresting? Is this just what I'm hearing about these people getting arrested for tweeting stuff and
Uh,
put in
no,
prison?
I mean age.
Oh,
I,
sorry.
the more, so I don't know. I only know what
You
I
just put in
do.
a wrong date of birth, though, don't you? Sean had
Well,
Facebook when she was like
this
young.
is what I'm wondering. So I, I am, I tend to have this opinion that I think a lot of British people have, that we're like the best in the world. And then I go and research things and find out that almost every country is doing things in a more considered way than we are. Like,
Switzerland are
I
probably the
think,
best. They're the best at everything.
well, so yeah, the United States aren't great. Of course, they're never that great either. They under 13s need parental consent before they sign up to social media. Australia have a ban of social media for under 16s. Norway have age restrictions on social media. They're intending to raise it from 13 to 15. But they've done some research and found that 58% of 10-year-olds and 72% of 11-year-olds are on social media. France have they ban under 15s from accessing social media without parental permission. Germany, teens between 13 and 16 need parents' permission. Italy, under 14s need parental consent. And South Korea, I thought this was an interesting one. They have,
Mm.
oh, actually, I don't think it's still there, but it's called the Cinderella Law, and it prevents teens under the age of 16 from using gaming sites between midnight and 6 a.m. to try and stop gaming addiction.
Oh,
And Greece
yeah, but how do they enforce this?
well, so I don't know if somewhere like South Korea might just not let those things be accessible. I don't know, but this is my question, because I do agree. I absolutely think there should be these laws in place. I think actually, to be honest, even older than, well, I think 16 is the minimum. If I were in charge, but
Oh, good God, if you were in charge.
I know that it's probably that there are ways around it. But you know how with the bank accounts you have to do that facial recognition thing. If you
Yeah,
set up an online, so
yeah.
surely they could do something like that with a passport. And if that is secure enough for banks to be set up, then it must be pretty
Mm.
soundproof.
But is this the underlying issue though? Is social media the underlying issue? Or is it the
Partially,
fact that parents don't have a connection to their children and they're off doing what the hell they want?
yeah, I think it's a mixture of both.
Mm.
Stuff definitely spreads faster, doesn't it, with social media? And bullying is so much easier with social media and so much less obvious.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that we
Like
didn't.
kids can't escape, and kids can't escape it. There's a
Yeah,
girl that I was working with, and she was, she was saying about things that are said to her when she gets home, and there is no escape from, unless you obviously switch your phone off and delete apps, which obviously adults are very much um, more well equipped with the emotional stability to be. Oh, I say that to be able to,
yeah,
to delete apps and to manage their time on things. Whereas kids, there's the fear of missing out, isn't there? If you're not
yeah.
on there, then and it's there's no escape. At
No,
least when you were home, when we were at school, you went home, and if there was any issues, it was like, oh, you didn't got to deal with it because you're at home now.
yeah. There's no escape. But also that I didn't really acknowledge this, but the program highlights as well how little we even again, it's fake, but even or fiction, but even the policeman wasn't aware of the meaning of some of the stuff
Mm.
on social media.
Yeah, and do you know what I found out about some of that stuff? And I mean, I asked Sean about it, but when I watched the Stacey Dooley documentary on kids and drugs in like some of these estates in London, and how these drug runners are using children,
It's not
and
just
how these
London.
different emoji, yeah,
It's
I
here.
did
Yeah.
just for there, yeah, and how what certain emojis mean. I didn't have a bloody. I think I use some of my social media. I use the yellow hearts. I'm like, what does it mean again? Because that was
Oh,
something in there, a yellow
yeah.
heart, and I'm like,
Well,
shit, I better go and change. I better go and edit it on my social media. I'm obviously sending some message out there for something not very good, but I use
oh,
yellow hearts sometimes. But
yeah.
yeah,
So we
they're
don't
not my
know.
audience, so it's fine.
So even if you were look, so people say, well, they've got social media, but I check it every day.
Yeah,
Well,
but you've got
people
to
have just put
understand.
emojis. You don't have a clue
But
what.
it's like when my diary when I was a child, I'd put code words in there. It's no different now to
No,
it was then. It's just a different format and a different way of delivery.
and it
It's an
becomes from other
evolution of
people.
communication.
It's a bullying from other. So yeah, I definitely think social media should not be for children under 16.
Yeah,
I think that we should just get rid of the bloody thing altogether. But yeah,
polish it all.
get rid of social, make my life easier. But I can't. People would argue me this, like whether there's benefits,
I think there's. Do
but
you know what I think there is benefits to? I think there's benefits to people that don't have access to perhaps other. Like say other people that are stuck in a sphere of maybe poverty,
yeah.
and they don't they don't know that there's other things out there. I think there's a really good aspects to social media, but with children they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use it to their benefit, and I think that's possibly
And I think
a
even
way of.
16 is too young, but I don't know at what point you put an age. You know, 18 is probably too. If you're going to have it, if we're going to have this, then why are we? You know, but below 16, they're still very little.
Mm.
So there you go.
So in
Any
your
other
opinion
thoughts?
then, no, I
Any other?
just yeah, no, I don't think that the yeah, I think I think it's that it goes back to connection with your children, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and people maybe need to really recognise what that is. We're sounding like we've got it nailed. We
Oh
haven't.
God, yeah. No, exactly. I'm the amount of mistakes I made. I can't sit here on my
Mm,
high horse.
no.
But luckily for me, I got the majority of it okay, so that I can still have a relationship with my child, and she's turned out not stabby, so that's good. Or being stabbed.
You're kind of not through it, but you've got past the
Yeah,
teenage years.
yeah. So, but by no means was I a perfect parent, and far actually from it. I think you've got it much more balanced than I definitely had, without a
Well,
doubt.
no, there'll be all the mistakes, just different ones.
It's hard, isn't it? This is the thing. It's like you can sit here and you can look at, and everyone can beat themselves up, and I don't think anyone, isn't it 60? As long as you make 60% of the decisions correctly, then you've got there when it comes to being a parent. So, but it's not easy.
And you look at some of these. I'm doing my research, as you know, on my hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and you look at some of these tribes who have a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, like they live exactly as our bodies evolved to live. And I think, God, I wouldn't do that with my children. I wouldn't treat my children like that. It's a lot harsher sometimes. But then they've got the village.
Yes, that's the thing, isn't it? They've got
Rightio.
the village. So do we
Well,
need our own
next
villages?
time, yeah, we
Well,
do. Next time I watch a
communes.
TV program in like about 2 years' time, we can talk about it.
Oh, don't now. Now the thing is, though, once you've watched that on Netflix, it then starts recommending you all sorts, and then you end up down the
I
rabbit
don't
holes
even
like
have
I did.
Netflix. Don't even have it. We've got a streaming device.
Oh yes, is it? We won't go. Very well worded there. Your use of the English language is amazing. Much better than mine.
Just realised as I was saying that I probably shouldn't have said it.
Be a knock at your door in a minute. Oh no, in a couple of months' time.
Oh, okay, right. See. All right. I'll speak to you next time. Bye-bye.
Together we'll grow, 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 grow. Grow together we'll grow, grow, grow.